The man was so fed up with his wife that he actually hired a lover for her. Crazy, right? But the movie doesn't start there. The movie begins in Nagoya, Japan. A Korean girl named Jung-in panics during an earthquake. She dives under the table and then bolts outside in fear. Strangely, everyone else around her is calm, including another Korean guy, Do-hyun. He reassures her and promises to take her somewhere safe where the tremors can't reach. It turns out Do-hyun is studying to be an architect, while Jung-in is training to be a chef. Out of nowhere, her phone buzzes. Mistaking the vibration for another quake, she scrambles back under the table. Do-hyun, however, stays composed and takes the chance to ask this timid girl out on a date. Fast forward 7 years, the two are now married, but things aren't so rosy. Jung-in lashes out at the mailman for tossing the newspaper into their yard. Despite her note asking him not to, the poor man tries to defend himself but nearly gets smacked for it. Annoyed, Do-hyun steps in and drags his wife back inside, only to get scolded himself for embarrassing her in front of strangers. Even when Do-hyun says no, Jung-in forces him to drink 2 glasses of juice. She won't leave him alone, not even if he's sitting on the toilet. Suddenly, Do-hyun blurts out, "Let's get a divorce," before backtracking and saying it was just a joke. That only makes her furious. She lights up a cigarette right in the kitchen, blows smoke in his face, and even starts vacuuming so he can't eat breakfast in peace. When he finally heads to work, she immediately calls him to complain that she feels ugly, constipated, and miserable. All because of him and his stupid jokes. They argue back and forth until Do-hyun finally snaps, shouts, "Fine, divorce it is," and promptly crashes into a car. Soon after, Do-hyun hears there's an opening for a specialist in another city. Without hesitation, he volunteers to go, but things get complicated when a rival shows up and starts playing on his emotions. One of Do-hyun's co-workers is miserable. His wife cheated on him and now he can't stand being at home. That poor guy ends up drinking with Do-hyun to drown his sorrows. Meanwhile, back at Do-hyun's place, Jung-in is waiting for him right at the door. She's chain-smoking, burning through pack after pack, and driving him insane. The next day at work, Do-hyun begs a colleague to let him leave town. No matter what happens at home, somehow he's always the one at fault, while his wife is always right. His bespectacled coworker suggests a sneaky plan: make Jung-in want the divorce herself by acting strange and unbearable. Do-hyun gives it a shot. He comes home refusing to change clothes, pretending to be sick, and even refuses to shower. But Jung-in isn't fazed at all. Soon enough, he's freshly washed, dressed again, and already polishing off his second plate of pasta. Clearly, reverse psychology won't work on her. Finally, Do-hyun breaks. He drops to his knees in front of his boss, begging to be sent on a business trip. When he gets the approval, he goes home and announces to Jung-in. But of course, she immediately starts grumbling that now the house will be left unattended. But even with the trip coming up, Do-hyun's family life continues to unravel. Jung-in keeps pestering him nonstop. He tries to escape into the bathroom, but she follows him right in. He's at his breaking point, imagining himself yelling at her to shut up, stuffing food into her mouth just to get her quiet, but that's only in his head. In reality, he's stuck sitting on the toilet while she unleashes another endless rant.
진짜 이기적이지 않아?
Later, Do-hyun throws a party to celebrate a new project. Everyone's invited to bring their partners, but he's so desperate for peace that he lies to his boss saying Jung-in is sick and can't come. On his way home, he notices drama unfolding everywhere. One woman storms out of his neighbor's place in tears. Another makes a scene. Furious after flying all the way from Spain just for a man who's betraying her, then a third woman crawls out of the bushes claiming she ran away from home for him. And to top it off, a fourth one gets kicked out of her lover's house after leaving her husband and kids. Everywhere Do-hyun looks, relationships are falling apart. Meanwhile, Jung-in doesn't even want to attend the party, but she forces herself to go for her husband's sake, and Do-hyun, out of ideas, pulls a ridiculous stunt. He smashes a plate and even pours dish soap on the floor in front of her. Jung-in slipped while running, but can a twisted ankle and a broken toe stop her? No way. She still showed up, and somehow she looked stunning, even on crutches. The director's wife immediately started grilling her with rude questions, like why she hadn't had kids yet. The other wives nodded in judgment, but Jung-in wasn't having it. She clapped back fast, putting the woman in her place. The problem was, she got a little carried away and ended up spilling food all over the snobby ladies. Later, when she got home, she saw her neighbor about to jump off the roof.
일단 내려오시고요.
She called the cops right away. Now they're all sitting at the police station. Outside, a crowd of women waits for the neighborhood heartthrob. Even the police captain's wife was swooning over him. Only Jung-in was furious at her neighbor for being so reckless. The police weren't thrilled either. One of the officers told Do-hyun he was lucky to have such an amazing wife because no woman could resist this Casanova. The crazy part? Every one of these women was married. Do-hyun then asked Casanova to meet with him and actually begged him to seduce his wife. Turns out, Do-hyun didn't have the guts to file for divorce himself. He told Casanova that if he didn't help, he'd rather drown, and he literally ran into the water. Casanova jumped in to save him, but ended up needing CPR himself. The so-called savior couldn't even swim and was terrified of water. Do-hyun complained that marrying his wife was like marrying a TV drama character. Still, that day in Japan changed everything for him. Casanova finally agreed to seduce this unusual woman. But first, Jung-in needed a job, so they'd have an excuse to meet. So, Do-hyun sent her to a radio station. Since she loves to talk more than anything, she immediately rattled off 100 ideas for future broadcasts. Her husband secretly arranged to pay her salary, but the confident Jung-in demanded triple pay on her own. On her first day at work, she didn't stop talking for a second.
제 말은 세상을 왜 좋게만 보냐는 거죠. 그렇게 큰 사고를 당하면 이렇게 얘기하는 게 상식 아닌가?
Commenting and criticizing everything under the sun, Casanova tried to impress her by flexing his body, but she just shoved him away and told her husband not to hang around this weirdo who wore only a t-shirt in the middle of winter. Casanova took that as a challenge. Now he was determined to win over this unusual woman, but without physical contact, as Do-hyun reminded him. The self-proclaimed expert quickly figured out a few things. She wasn't feeling well, she wore Chanel perfume, and she was constipated. He had only seen her 3 times, but he wasted no time observing. Still, it wasn't enough. Casanova gave Do-hyun an assignment. Write down every detail about his wife, from her morning bathroom habits to her erogenous zones, her favorite books, flowers, and even athletes. Everything. At one point, Casanova pretended he was about to throw away an entire box of perfectly good dishes. Jung-in was shocked, but he immediately switched to playing the vulnerable man, even squeezing out a fake tear. After tea, he suddenly ran off, leaving the dishes behind. When Jung-in came over to return them, she discovered just how fascinating her neighbor's life was. His house was filled with beautiful things, including more expensive dishes. He casually mixed a cocktail, then slipped into French as he discussed business on the phone, like some mysterious playboy straight out of a movie. Turns out, Casanova and Jung-in shared the same taste in French perfume and literature. She even admitted she used to have a nickname, the 2-month girl. At first, men were drawn to her pretty face, but after 2 months, they couldn't stand being around her anymore. Casanova listened closely, showering her with compliments. That night in bed, Jung-in told her husband that their neighbor wasn't such a bad guy after all. The radio host colleague wanted to invite her out for wine, but Casanova swooped in first, and she chose him instead. He took her to a farm, offering her fresh milk and showing off what his naughty fingers could do. Soon, things got a little too close for comfort when he decided to teach her how to milk a cow. Later, she honestly told her husband everything, how awkward it was having Mr. Milkman leaning in from behind and whispering indecent jokes. Still, Jung-in kept hanging out with her new friend. Meanwhile, her husband was getting daily updates straight from Casanova. On the radio, Jung-in's shows were blowing up in popularity. Her co-host kept trying to take her out, but she ignored him completely. She actually felt more at ease around Casanova. One day, the two of them went to an abandoned park. That's when Casanova went full romantic, telling her he was losing his mind and couldn't live without her. Then, realizing how heavy it sounded, he laughed it off, claiming those were just lyrics from the song playing nearby. The moment was painfully awkward. Do-hyun, of course, was spying on them. Casanova spotted him, chased him down, and pressured him not to interfere. He reminded Do-hyun that he wasn't a fighter and begged him not to question his loyalty. Slowly, Jung-in's world stopped revolving solely around her husband. She poured herself into work, and her spirits were higher than ever. Still, from time to time, she'd feel a wave of nostalgia for the early days of her marriage, back when they were deeply in love. They once had so many romantic moments. At one point, the couple nearly made love again, but Jung-in got a sudden call from work and bolted, leaving her husband lying naked on the couch. Soon, she was offered the chance to host her own show nationwide, but it meant returning to Seoul. Everything seemed to be falling into place, but the tiniest disagreements kept driving them apart. In the end, Jung-in left for Seoul on a sour note. Do-hyun told Casanova that things had resolved themselves, and his services were no longer needed. But Casanova wasn't convinced. He felt the game wasn't over and planned to keep playing. Now, Jung-in and her husband were living separately. She and her team focused on bold, provocative interviews with celebrities, like one with a choreographer accused of groping his young, muscular students. Meanwhile, Do-hyun's co-workers were calling his wife cool, even featuring her in a magazine article. Then, out of nowhere, Jung-in returned to Kang-in, this time driving her own car. Even with her crazy schedule, Jung-in still cooked up a whole spread of delicious food for her husband. She's got big dreams and plenty of plans, but she's nowhere near the perfect wife role yet. She doesn't even stay the night. She's always rushing back to the studio. Before leaving, she admits she had a dream where she made love to some man, but she never saw his face. Later in Seoul, Casanova lures Jung-in to a restaurant so he can hand her some notes that'll help with her writing. She's planning to publish articles for a magazine. Over dinner, she confides that no matter how hard she and her husband try, they can't have kids. Meanwhile, Do-hyun tries to call a neighbor, only to find out the number's disconnected. That dinner ends up being her last meeting with Casanova. For a moment, she almost leans in to kiss him, but then pulls back. Remembering how he once rejected her on the playground, she admits to him that she dreamed of sleeping with him. Then she says goodbye to her neighbor, but he refuses to let her walk away so easily. Casanova suddenly hugs Jung-in and confesses that he's in love with her, but then he says he's willing to forget her. Delete her number, and disappear. With that, he walks out, leaving her completely stunned. Not long after, Do-hyun nearly runs Casanova over with his car, but he begs him to stop interfering, terrified of losing his wife. Ironically, Do-hyun's finally fallen for her again. She's cheerful, glowing, and charming, and now he can't get enough of her. But the twist, Casanova himself has fallen head over heels for Jung-in. For once, the legendary heartbreaker is in love, and he refuses to hand her over to what he sees as a fool of a husband. Do-hyun rushes home, desperate to pay attention to his wife. But before he can, he gets an urgent call and has to leave again. At work, he chats with a divorced colleague, who to his surprise, ended up remarrying the same woman. Meanwhile, Jung-in unexpectedly finds herself assigned to interview Casanova once more. Their conversation is blunt and personal, leaving their co-workers puzzled. Casanova shares the story of the femme fatale who completely changed his life, then disappeared to Seoul. Out of nowhere, Do-hyun blurts, "This is all because of me. Did you sleep with him? I hired him to seduce you." In that instant, Jung-in realizes the truth. Her husband had grown tired of her and staged the whole thing just to get grounds for a divorce.
날 헤어지고 싶었던 거야?
그건 아니고.
아니지 뭐가 아니야.
And now, after all this, he suddenly wants her back. The worst part? Casanova actually won her heart. He knew what she liked, listened when she spoke, and was always there when she needed him. She never even realized people could treat her like that. But in the end, it was all just a setup. She feels utterly betrayed. 7 years of her life wasted on this fool.
왜 이래 진짜?
손대지 마 앞으로.
And right then, the ground starts shaking. A massive earthquake hits. Jung-in delivers her final broadcast in canon, telling the story of a pathetic man who tried to divorce his wife by hiring another man to seduce her. Do-hyun listened closely as Jung-in wrapped up her broadcast with one final thought. Loved ones need to talk to each other. Anything in life can be fixed if you don't stay silent.
이 일을 시작하면서 제가 깨달은 사실이에요.
With tears in her eyes, she announced to her listeners that she wanted a divorce. Later, she sat by the ocean, heartbroken. Right in front of her, Casanova walked into the sea, trying to drown himself. She rushed in, and soon the two of them, both soaked, were riding together in the back of a police car. Jung-in wasn't angry with him anymore, but she told him they had to forget each other. Meanwhile, a worried Do-hyun met his wife and learned that she had rented out their house and packed all her belongings. He begged her to talk things through, but she reminded him it was too late. Those conversations should have happened long ago.
너 라디오도 그만뒀잖아.
강의 자리에 많이 들어와.
Casanova, watching from the side, called Do-hyun a cowardly ram. Still, he told him there was hope if he rebuilt his marriage from the ground up, like a foundation after an earthquake. When Jung-in and Do-hyun were packing the last of their things in Seoul, a newspaper came flying toward them. This time it was Do-hyun's turn to scold the poor postman, just like Jung-in once did. That night, they stayed in their house one last time, but in separate rooms. At some point, Jung-in slipped into her husband's bed and kissed him. Yet by morning, she was gone again. Eventually, the couple went to court to file for divorce. But on the way, they stopped at a little cafe for a quick bite. When a waitress made a careless mistake, Do-hyun snapped at her. Jung-in scolded him right away, lecturing him about life.
그러니까 그 정도 고통이 힘들다고 징징대면서 남한테까지 패기치면 안 되지.
Just like in the old days, for the first time in a long while, he realized how much he had missed her nagging. Now that he was staring down loneliness, he finally understood why she used to act the way she did. Then, just like before, Jung-in's phone buzzed, and she ducked under the table just as she once had in Japan. And once again, Do-hyun leaned down and invited her on a date. The couple never made it back to court. Casanova, with all his dramatic tales, ended up taking over Jung-in's spot on the radio instead. That was all about my wife. If you vibed with this recap, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next crazy story I drop.